Coming up today, Blizzard is on a roll, and that likely means that the middle big giant cake portion of the player base is dropping in numbers. Raid loot has been buffed by 33%, and they are adding in some Valor point hotfixes and changes to make us all prepared for this system. Let's take a look. We have seen several changes coming out in what is going to be the biggest update to the loot system, which was always in flux coming into the Shadowlands, and that likely, at least in my prediction, and we're going to put you guys to the test, you could choose a side as to which person you believe over in Team PG as to why this is happening now. Typically, let's talk about the raid loot buff. So we have seen that going forward, raids will drop 33% more loot in all difficulties, and weapon tokens will drop more often than they did previously. So you should see just a general uptick in loot from raids. Raid loot has been controversial since it started. Most people were just not seeing anything. I went entire raids without seeing a single item. If I did get an item, it was likely because it was traded to me, and that happened so many times. And when you do get that drop, it's not something you actually want, which is a common problem when you are looking to min-max your character. However, a lot of this stuff is getting some feedback. Is like, why now? Why after we've gone through this raid tier? Of course, this is in preparation for the next raid tier. That is exactly what it's for. You might not see the benefits now if you've already farmed most of your gear, or you're coming to the end of the life cycle of the tier, which many people are not, so it will still benefit them. But next tier, this should be a big, big help to avoid this problem. Now, why is Blizzard changing it now? Why are Valor points coming in? This has been the big topic that we've been discussing internally here as to putting predictions forward as to why Blizzard has decided to address this now. Is it purely because, okay, we've had a tier and we've seen how the loot is working out. People are shifting, obviously, through their metrics towards PvP, a more consistent system. They seem happy with that. So let's just try and implement that over here and see if we can get somewhere in the middle ground which people find acceptable. Or, and I generally am the pessimist here, so excuse me, Blizzard, if you are watching this, I'm generally the pessimist is because it's hurting their bottom line. That's how I feel Blizzard responds quickly and heavily to certain things, which we have seen not only the raid drop loot increase, but also the Valor point loot, Valor point change, which is coming in, is typically because the middle pack of the player base is falling away. And if that happens, that's a big, big problem, and they need to address it. And something that prompted this was actually, as you guys know, we are a mostly demonetized channel, which means the amount of our videos that actually get monetization is pretty low, and when they do, they tend to be crap. So we're supported by you guys over on our website, and someone cancelled today. The feedback was posted to me is because they were struggling to do, say, Mythic plus 11, but also there was no loot dropping, and loot is a big problem because they're not getting that reward for putting in the time. So while his team was struggling to get something done like a plus 11, then at the same time, they're not getting any rewards for the amount of effort they're putting in at their level in order to get this content done. And loot is a big, big deal to a lot of people. So while looking into this and having this discussion, it prompted our internal discussion as to what's happening in the middle of the player base. So we have two working theories, ladies and gentlemen. One from Mr. Nups, who is our more meticulous statistician of the group, and also mine, which I'm throwing in as well. So in Nubs' opinion, what seems to be happening is that at BFA, through Warforging and Titan Forging, is it didn't matter what level of content you did, there was always an upgrade to be chased. We read through several threads today, and this is going to be eye-opening for some of you, but there are a lot of players out there who simply geared up by spamming world quests. And I saw that argument put forth several times. It's like, well, in order to gear my characters, because I don't like dungeons, I don't like PvP, and I don't like raiding, I don't like any, basically, I do not like any of the systems that are the end game systems of World of Warcraft. What I like is a very solo RPG experience that is very comfortable and very easy, and that's what I like to do. But with the Warforged Titanforge system, I could literally just clear the map of world quests every day and kind of hope something was Titanforging, and therefore I always had an upgrade to chase within my level of play in World of Warcraft. And that's fine, by the way. I know some people will be like snubbing their nose at that, but Honestly, however you choose to play an MMO is however you choose to play an MMO. I don't care if that's how you want to play the game. That's fine. It feels like a waste of time to me, but that's because I just play in a different way. So that's the situation some people are in, and obviously they have now hardcore plateaued. So what they will see is if they do take part in some BGs, they do maybe do the odd one weekly Mythic Plus, because that's the way the game works, is that they have not had a steady increase in item level on their character. What they've had is this very steep increase that has happened with the initial launch of the game, and then really hardcore tapered off into a very gentle rise where literally the Great Vault at the end of the week is the only thing providing any form of upgrade, and they're hoping that that will provide some form of upgrade. So the Valor point system, at least in Nups's mind, is going to bridge that gap. It's going to provide some way of upping that, because you can earn Valor points from callings and do that kind of stuff. So it will allow them to bridge up in a steeper item level curve, although they will never reach, maximum heights, which has been part of the feedback about the Mythic Plus change, is why Valor points can't go all the way to, say, Mythic item level, but it will provide a slightly steeper increase. I'm going a slightly different way with what I think's happened, so that's Nups's theory. My theory is slightly more doom and dystopia, but it comes from, I don't know, this comes from my general telling of when Blizzard responds kind of hard and quick to certain things. I actually think that a lot of players have completely tapered off, and not just plateaued in terms of a steady increase in item level, but actually just stopped increasing, depending on whichever level you're at. So I think people have literally just come to the almost cap of their character quite early in the expansion, and no seemingly way in their eyes of upgrading that character. If you do not like or are not good at doing PvP, even to a moderate level, and the same can be said for dungeons, and the same can be said for raiding. We do know the amount of people who cannot get into pugs for whatever reason. They can't get into dungeon pugs, they can't get into any of that content, and therefore give up. Now, what that means, of course, is that their character just comes to a flat stop. There's no steady incline, because they simply refuse to take part in that. And that comes along with the idea that getting rewards from, even if they do attempt to get into a dungeon, and they do get a Mythic Plus done, is there's no loot at the end of it, or they do manage to get into a raid pug and they don't get anything after putting in potentially a tremendous amount of time and effort, is that they simply stop taking part, ergo they stop playing, because they're just not getting the rewards they need. And this feeds back to that feedback we had earlier on from somebody who cancelled the support for us, is that we're just not getting anything for what we're putting it in. We're pouring all this time and effort into the bucket, we are doing it, we are trying to push, yet we're not getting anything for it. So that, in my mind, translates to they're not playing anymore. They're not paying their subscription, they're going to cancel, they're going to wait because they're just not happy. And Valor points come into kind of clutch there, because if we look at that example, they're going to be working on something. They're going to be upgrading it. And we know a huge amount of the player base believes item level is everything. The only reason people can do X content is because of their gear. The only people can clear raids is because of gear. And skill, generally speaking, as horrible as it sounds, and it's not something we promote here at all, the ability of the player is pushed to the side in favor of what gear I have. And Blizzard has played into that many times over the years with a lot of RNG stuff, which is less relevant than Shadowlands, so no doubt those players are having a much more difficult time. So what I believe has happened is they've just really stopped. They're not going to take part in Mythic Plus because I don't get anything from doing the dungeon. I don't care about waiting for just relying on the casino of the Great Vault. And the same can be said for PvP, because I don't enjoy PvP, which is, again, a lot of players, so I'm not going to take part in that. And I'm not going to take part in raiding because I have to queue up for maybe 2 to 3 hours, get into a pug, and then I don't get anything to drop anyway, or the pug falls apart, and it's a horrible experience to begin with. Ergo, the Great Vault is now no longer a factor, and their character is just dead stuck in the water because there's no other sources of gear outside of those areas. So there it is. So what I believe these systems are designed to do is, it's never going to reach the stratosphere, but it will give that bit by bit feeding of some sort of progress to a character through all that. And instead of it being some sort of bridge over, it's actually going to be the thing that people climb. It's going to be Blizzard is basically building a staircase that anybody can climb given enough time, and that means that whenever they decide to take part in something, that they'll get something out of it that they can use. And from that perspective, I think that that's what Blizzard's looking at. I think the middle of the player base is really hardcore struggling right now. I could be completely wrong. Nups might be completely right. The vice versa could be true, but I'd be happy to see where you guys stake your claim in that idea. Our next hot topic here was the fact that it has been confirmed that, if you remember, if you saw our last talk on Valor points, is when logging into the PTR to check this system out, that none of our items currently equipped showed any form of upgrade path. Usually we will see something like 0 out of 2 upgrades applied, things like that. None of our items have that. Blizzard have now confirmed that the current items you have before this change comes in with the Valor point system will not be upgradable. So if you want to have an item that you can upgrade, it's going to have to drop again. Now, Blizzard's take on this is more one of convenience, I believe. They could make this change. They have done this in the past. It is entirely possible from a technical level, although I have no doubt at all it is a hassle to change all the item codes and things like that to what people have to the new ones, all that kind of stuff. But they could do it, right? Let's be clear. They could do it. They're just choosing not to. Their argument is there is no doubt people who have had BIS items drop that were of a low item level from, say, a Mythic plus 7 or something like that, and they're now up to Mythic plus 15s, and they do not want everybody going back through their item history to recover those items just so they can start upgrading them. They don't want people going and complaining that, well, I did get the BIS trinket, but it was low item level, so of course I got rid of it. Then going back and trying to fish that out of something that they disenchanted or sold to a vendor, something along those lines, and having the most of the player base who did that early Mythic Plus surge, which we know did happen, going back through all their items to fish out their BIS set, and then they can start working on the upgrades. So this is going to leave a sour taste in a lot of mouths, including my own, because getting the item to drop, as we said in the last video, is actually one of the biggest hurdles to overcome in the current M+ loot system. There has been no buffs to the amount of loot that drops at the end of M+, which means you're then starting this whole system kind of fresh, depending on where your current character is, whether he's got great gear from raiding or from PvP. If you are wearing a lot of M+ items, you're going to be kind of up shit's creek from now, but not going forward. And I think that's always the good thing to remember, is once this change comes in, the change is in, and it is done, it is going to happen. So it's going to be a pain in the ass, and a lot of people are going to be very upset about this. So in your minds, if you're listening to this, be ready for this. If you are looking to have a dungeon-focused character that is upgrading his gear through Valor points, through doing a lot of dungeons, you're going to have to get those items that maybe you already have, that BIS helmet or BIS gloves or whatever it is. They're going to have to drop again if you want to be upgrading them to the 220 item level, which is going to be available after this change. In good news, especially for the people who are very, very wary of Blizzard systems, they have decided that now the upgrades from the Maw, which is your socket upgrades and your conduit upgrades, will now only affect Season 1 items. They are not going to be useful going into the next tier. So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is people hardcore farming the Maw every day, racking up enormous amounts of Stygia in order to be ready for the next tier, so they don't have to farm the Maw while they're progressing and doing all that kind of stuff, and having this essential infinite bag supply of adding sockets to any old item that drops next time. That is not going to work. They have decided that those upgrades are going to come from there. What we do not know yet, though, is what is the replacement for that system, because no doubt that will exist. There is always still the chance that they're going to put in, very similar to what they did with Titan Resonum, is put in the next Season 2 items and just make it cost 10 times more Stygia or something along those lines. I really hope they do not go that way, because that doesn't actually solve the problem of hardcore farming the Maw, which is not something people want to do. What could be the obvious solution to this is Valor points themselves. Valor points are coming along, and Valor points could be there to provide those upgrades. It also means that people who focus on M+, or focus on getting Valor points, are also going to get their upgrades from running dungeons, from doing callings, things like that, and they won't have to do the Maw specifically just to get that. However, the question does come off the back of that, then what becomes of the Maw? Because without Stygia, the Maw really doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever. So you have to imagine Blizzard is going to do something with the Maw and something with Stygia in order to affect Season 2. They may just come up with new Stygia, modern Stygia, advanced Stygia, something along those lines, which affects the next level of conduits and upgrades and sockets that come from the Maw right now in order to make that work. Personally, I would like to see something modified with the Great Vault. 750 Stygia is actually insanely bad. Blizzard needs to do something there, because that is not a reward we were expecting. Anima would be so much better in many cases, so people could upgrade their Sanctum if they're not getting a new piece of gear. But either way, it's very, very unlikely that they're going to let them all rot and die, and they're likely just to replace it with something else. I really do hope, though, that it's not a case of, well, if you want the Season 2 conduits, you're going to need a lot more Stygia, ha 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 ha, or something along those lines, because that would be really sad and tragic, and we don't want that to happen either. But I'd love to see your theories about what their replacement could be. Valor Point seems the obvious way to go, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. So those are some more big changes that are coming to the Shadowlands in order to make it better. Universally, these are all good changes. Let's be clear on this. These are all good changes. They could be done better. Certainly in the Mythic Plus items you currently have not being upgradable is kind of a pain in the ass because of the reasons we've talked about. And in terms of our theories, what do you guys think? Let us know. Thank you very much for listening, guys, and I'll see you again. Bye-bye.